Donald Trump Jr. also appeared at this Turning Point USA event, and he said something very ironic. He went after the left and the media and those suppressing him, and I'll show you the clip in a second here, but for uplifting the bad communicators or the goofy lunatics within the right wing and not focusing on the, real impactful thinkers and speakers like Donald Trump Jr., I guess, is the point he's trying to make. And so I'm sure you know already, but I'll explain why I find that so funny in a second here, and then we'll have a larger discussion about this. Take a look.
I promise you, the content didn't go to hell. The content was good, a little bit rough, but it happened like that every time. Right now we see it. Now we see it in the files. Whether it's Charlie, who's done an incredible job growing this group, then we saw it was me they were trying to cancel as well as part of that. I was like, shocking. I'm so shocked that people who are effective communicators, people who are willing to engage in the insanity that we are up against, of course those are the ones they shut down. You know who the people who can't articulate a point, who look ridiculous, those are the people on the right, because we all have our lunatics. They'll boost that to make it seem like that's the fight between the one rational leftist and the lunatic rightist. But
Okay, so this is actually really important to talk about, because there's an issue in a lot of political settings where one side, for their benefit, will talk about only the dumbest people of the other side, and that side will talk about only the... So then most people are misinformed about actually what the other side looks like in a wholesale sense. And one of the things I do a lot is talk to you about, this isn't everybody, or this is not representative of every single conservative, but here's who this does represent. And so I want to break this down because I've gotten people, even on my videos, making this critique of, oh, you spend too much time talking about this person or that person. It's just the one crazy right-winger, you shouldn't talk about them. But here's why what he's saying is actually incorrect. Number one, what's ironic and silly about it is he's the goofy right-winger that people will focus on. So it's funny that he's like, why don't you focus more on me, because I'm actually great at communicating, when I play clips of him when I've covered him and barely even have to add commentary, because it's just like, look, right? But more importantly, the reason why we spend so much time on this show looking at critiquing people within the right wing, and we don't go find like who's the dumbest person we can find within the left wing space, is because I care about who has power and influence within politics. I'm covering American politics, so what matters to cover the most is those in power or those who influence power in a significant way. So people like Trump, or even Marjorie Greene, or the Lauren Boeberts, or all these people that we'll cover that I think would fall into kind of the radical right-winger category, we cover them not only because they're saying wacky and dangerous stuff, but also because they represent a movement in our country and they have power. Trump's power used to be actually in our government, but now has become the movement that he leads, and then some of these other people are actually in our government. So the difference between, he said every side has their lunatics, true. But the difference between the right-wing, quote-unquote, lunatics and the left-wing, quote-unquote, lunatics is where things stand now, it's a very fringe group on the left who, admittedly, sometimes on Twitter, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are going crazy. But it doesn't represent the broader movement that affects people's lives within power, right? Whereas the right-wing group actually has their hands on power in significant ways. And so that's why we cover them. And the way I like to phrase it is, it's not my fault that you choose to put up Herschel Walker as your senatorial candidate, for example. I think maybe he would put that person as someone who kind of makes a fool of himself. It's not our fault that you put Marjorie Taylor Greene as a congressional candidate. It's not my fault that you put Carrie Lake as a gubernatorial candidate. That's what the Republican Party is choosing. Whereas whenever the right-wingers go find like the person who gets owned the hardest on the left within liberal Twitter or whatever, they can't show me how that connects to the power centers that influence people's lives. So that's where the distinction is for me, and that's why I format the show the way that I do. And it's funny that he's trying to blur those lines, and that he doesn't represent or recognize that he represents the goofy right-wingers that we oftentimes find ourselves laughing at. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before any of the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get a full extra show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley, and there's a link in the description.